Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and look, it's Austin, the Day Ghost.
Ooh, what's up?
How you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Well, I'm good. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another ReQuest. Isn't that exciting? And today, I think we might be talking about the most obscure movie we've ever done on this show.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that too, because I was like, I would need to look it up, but I don't know how much money that Boy Wonder movie made or how much that cost.
That's true. Well,
Because that was
and
also pretty low scale.
pretty independent, yeah. And I say obscure before I say like least
Well,
expensive,
that's
because
true
it's
too.
it's almost certainly the least expensive movie we've ever reviewed. Like that Boy Wonder movie even had to have cost more. Like we'd have to go look it up, obviously. But so I guess I should go ahead and tell you guys what we're talking about, even though it's in the title and you clicked on it. It's Coherence, which is a movie that came out in 2014, and it is really an experimental movie. I'll let Austin tell us about the premise in a second, but the idea for how the movie was made is let's make a movie that is so minimalistic there is no crew and there is no script, and the whole idea was to just bring in a camera and have a very thought out game plan with a like this movie does have a structure and it does have an outline, and there are a lot of plot points that were figured out ahead of time. Apparently, the director spent a year planning this movie out before he got directors, or pardon me, before he got actors in a room that had no idea what they were even going to be doing and just handed them note cards with information about their characters.
Oh, it's
Uh,
like Blair Witched it.
yeah, kind of, sort of. Except they didn't try to make anybody think that any of what was happening was real.
Yeah.
Like they knew they were actors. It's basically a really elaborate. And this is going to make it sound not as interesting as it is, or like I'm throwing shade at it or something, but it's kind of a really elaborate improv exercise.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize that about the script. I did like a little bit of background information, but not a ton. So I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way this movie was put together, and in some ways, maybe more interesting than the movie itself, I think. But we'll talk about it. Yeah, this was requested by Trilemma on Patreon. Thanks a lot to him.
I
I'm not
don't
sure how he
recognize that
found
name.
out. Say again.
So I don't recognize that name. I don't think we've had him on request
No,
before.
we haven't, and that's not a name I recognize from comments and stuff either. It might be somebody that changed his name at some point, or if you
Mhm.
if he told me what he used to go by, I would recognize it. But anyway, thanks a bunch to him, and I'm not sure how he knew about this movie. It's not a thing I had ever heard of at all, and the only actor that I recognized is Nicholas Brendan from Buffy. Everybody else is totally new to me. And I didn't look up anybody to see what folks were in, but I'm sure some of them are stage actors as opposed to movie and TV actors. But he's probably the most famous person in this movie.
Yeah, one of the things that was funny to me was that Sunday night or no Monday night I watched Terrifier 2, which cost 250,000, and then this cost 50,000. But I looked at both on Wikipedia, and this it's like, oh, maybe like 5 out of 10 people in this, or like 8 people in this movie had a Wikipedia page, and for that movie there was not like one person, and it was because they were in the first one. And I was
Oh,
shocked by
interesting.
that 'cause, this is like a way smaller budget than that did.
Well, and I'm not even sure where the budget went. Like, I don't know if the actors got paid or if they just did this for free as a thing to put on their resumes. I'm going to assume that that's the only reason it cost as much as it did, is that the actors probably got paid.
Yeah, I'm guessing that 7 of the actors were paid, and then one of them was paid in beer, and then that was basically it.
Well, and
That
there
was really
were,
funny, man.
not to get too far ahead of ourselves, and we will have to spoil some things to talk about this, but just right away before we get into more of the nitty gritty, I'll just say that there are a couple of other actors besides the principal eight that came in to do like a quick scene later on. There's this movie has a couple of instances of doubles of characters, and they needed people to come in for that. And I didn't realize this. Nicholas Brendan has a twin brother, and that's how they did that scene. Like, there's no special effects in this
Oh,
movie whatsoever, and
that's
they
crazy.
brought in his twin brother to fight him. Yeah.
which is weird because I mean it's still like him from the back, so I just assumed like, oh, we just got a stand-in.
I
I mean,
think.
which technically is what they did, but that
Well,
is
and with
crazy.
the girl later, yeah, but I think maybe you see his face because I feel like there's at least one spot where you see both of them, but they didn't even take a lot of advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
I am probably spoiling a little bit too much right now, but but there's a place later where one of the girls there's two versions of her, and they do that way. Like the other one either has a wig or just hair really similar, but.
Well, they do my favorite thing, which is that the one his hair go over their face when they're both when they're both there.
Austin, would you give us a brief synopsis of this little sci-fi thriller shot in one living room?
Yes. So Coherence. I
Yes.
got to make sure because I keep getting the title wrong.
You keep
Um,
wanting to call it Convergence, right?
yeah. No, I had a whole read on why it was called Convergence when I watched it, and then realized that's not what the title is. But yeah, Coherence is a movie about 8 people that are having dinner together, and then there's an evil comet coming by, and the comet spreads its evil, and it opens up a convergence of realities. Uh, and basically, you have
It could have been called that.
yeah, no, it does work. Uh, but so the characters believe that there's another reality down the road from them that they can interact with, and then slowly realize that there's other realities, possibly infinite, who knows? And yeah, they just deal with that and they figure out what they're gonna do, and they stand in a room.
Yeah, sometimes some of them will leave and go to one of the other houses. That's the same house, but has been. At first, I thought it's like it's been duplicated, but I guess the idea is if you pass through this like dark area on the street, you wind up in another reality, and there's no way to know which one you're going to wind up in because it's completely random when you walk through it. So. One of the big twists is you get to a place where you think you're looking at only the versions of the characters that you've been with since the beginning, and then it turns out that multiple, and it's tracked really well that some of the folks that you think you've been watching the whole time that left, the character that comes back is not the person that left in the first place. And one of those in particular is really interesting because like the whole movie you think it's the first version of him, and then you're like, oh, he never came back. And like he finally shows back up toward the end, and you're like, that's crazy! And he's been gone that whole time.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that. A lot of people playing just slight different versions of each other or of themselves.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think
Mm,
the idea, just straight away, I'll ask you this.
yeah.
So coherence, the title has to do with the quantum physics principle or theory that the movie is exploring, and it deals with the idea of the Schrodinger's cat and all of that. There's a girl who luckily has done a whole bunch of research on this comet and has just read Wikipedia all day because nobody's phones are working, and so she's able to explain a bunch of stuff that about the comet. And like I guess everybody is kind of a smart person in this movie, so like there's different characters that know some things. But most of all, it's just this girl that's been doing a lot of Wikipedia reading.
Well, there's like quite a bit of just like, oh, well, this is happening, and everyone goes, "Yep."
I do
Okay.
want to talk about that because that is a big issue I've got with this movie, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I want to ask you this question. Is the idea that these are all realities that already existed, where it's like a multiverse, or is the idea that the comet splintered a reality that we had already, and everything starts from that one point where they're all at the party, and then people have slight variations based on the various choices that each person might have made, and different people make different choices? Because I think it's that second thing.
That's probably what it is. Uh, I'm guessing just from what we know. It's one of those things. It's like time travel, where the second you start to break it down, it's like, oh, I've gone cross-eyed.
That's true, but I don't feel like there's a bunch of paradox issues with this movie necessarily. Like I think, well, okay. There's another
It's
question I have with this
something
too.
that's kind of inherent to this type of thing,
The
like time
reason I
travel.
asked you that is because I was gonna describe this initially as a multiverse movie, but it is and it isn't, right?
Mhm. It's multiverse in the way that like Endgame is, where it's like they're not really time traveling, they're jumping into different universes, but it's all tracked on like one track. It's just like off. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the idea is that you're seeing universes spin off, which creates some really interesting ethical issues that are explored a little bit, or at least introduced. The idea that all of each version of the 8 characters started from this one point at the beginning of the evening. So, like, are they all separate people? Like, if you decided to go kill one of, because there are a couple places where people attempt to do this. If you were to decide to go kill yourself from another of these realities, is it murder? I don't know for sure.
Hmm.
That was one
Yeah,
of my
for
big
sure.
takeaways from this. Is I like when the girl toward the end. I guess we're gonna spoil some stuff. When the because I don't know how else to talk about this particular movie. But when there's a bit toward the end where there's a girl who decides that maybe she'd rather live in a different version of her life, and maybe wants to replace herself. And when she attacks the other version of her, like, how wrong is that? It's a question.
Hmm. No, if Cap was in this movie, he would become like the fry box killer of Captain Logan's in that world, where he just went around like collecting all the different caps and eating them.
Senior Six says no cap at suicide. Well, sort of. It kind of depends on how everything would work out at the end. Like if you would end up with just one of you, or if all of the various versions of you were to continue. But anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. One question I wanted to ask you too is when at the very beginning of the movie, when the party goers walk outside, and or some of them do, and they look down the street, and they go 2 blocks away. There's a house that has its lights on, and it's the only one on around that does, and everybody else has lost power because the comet has passed by. The question, and they show the comet in the sky. Maybe the $50,000 went to the comet in the sky, because that is the one special effect in the entire movie. I kind of forgot about that.
That was like a $40,000 effect.
And then everybody else got like $1,200 to do the movie. The director, by the way, is James Ward. Beer Kit, I want to go ahead and drop his name real quick. And he said the whole idea was, let's make a movie with no budget whatsoever. But there is a comet in the sky, and I'm pretty sure they didn't get lucky enough that comet just happened to be, streaking by at that moment.
Probably it's like some public domain image.
Because it didn't look bad, though.
No, no. I wondered if they filmed, even if it wasn't like a comet, like something, like some sort of launch or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
To get that effect.
It did not look real, but it looked good. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't look like a thing that they probably were able to shoot. But
Well, part of it's also that it's like completely pitch black, and there's just like a yellow line that's going across.
no, that's true. But like, you can kind of see sparklers behind it. Like, there's a little bit of an effort in that effect, if it is an effect. I'm not sure what it is. I digress.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was like a sparkler, and it's just like
They
in
just
a
shot
black
that,
and white. Yeah,
and then overlaid it later on.
yeah.
The question I was going to ask you is,
Mhm.
because I spent the whole movie confused about space and matter. Like is that because the house they're talking about is their house, and a couple of them leave the house and they walk a couple blocks and they find that house. But then we find out later that they've walked through the dead zone, or the dark zone, and sometimes the characters that come back aren't those characters. So so my question is our house, has it been duplicated in different places in space? Like, or when they look down the block and they see that house, what are they seeing? Because my assumption is the house has to be always occupying the same place in time, right? Star Trek deals with this a lot, where you'll have like multiple dimensions, where you have a ship and people that are occupying the same space at the same time. It's about phasing realities, right? And the idea of phasing is dealt with a little bit in this movie too. So if they're seeing a house that's a couple blocks down, but it is this house, I don't fully understand that unless they're looking through that dark zone and seeing that house somehow. I was very confused about that.
Almost like, um, oh my god, what are those things called? You know, like when you're a kid in school and like they show you lines and you have to, yeah, they give you that red plastic thing and you put it down so you can see the parallel line.
Yeah,
It's like that. Like you're looking at just a reflection, but it's like there's like a line on the planet and it's just mirrored.
maybe that's what it is.
I don't know.
Did you
Yeah.
have what I did? I was imagining all of these houses just take over like space and matter, and like the whole couple block radius, just nobody else exists anymore because somehow this house got duplicated a bunch of times. And then I got to the end of the movie and realized that wasn't what was happening once they started describing what exactly the dark zone did. But
Mhm.
but I wasn't totally sure what they were seeing when they look beyond it and they see that house.
Yeah, I guess it's just supposed to be that they see their own house, but yeah, that becomes weird. I don't know, something evil comet. They
I mean,
always
that's
they always make you see things.
well, that's the thing is, I don't want to see the trees for the forest too much with this and spend too much time trying to break down a conceit. But I think the movie wants to be smart enough about its science that it is almost as much about this concept as it is the characters involved and the relationships that they're having. It doesn't seem like just a conceit to explore characters, because so much of it really did feel like a Star Trek episode to me in a lot of ways. And obviously, it's very much a Twilight Zone episode, but it's with its premise and with its minimalism and with its kind of O. Henry ending even. But it felt like a Star Trek episode in that it's this real trippy kind of Brannon Braga concept that is this problem that we have to try to figure out how to solve. And yeah, we explore our characters a little bit throughout it, but most of the idea is just these people trying to figure out how to get out of this bizarre situation and like understand it and figure out whether or not they're going to still be themselves in the morning.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it is more so about the actual concept than it is exploring characters, like you said. And well, and that was something too, because you brought up the Twilight Zone, and I do feel like if this was a Twilight Zone episode, I'd probably like it a little bit better. Um, just in the way that they like handle characters and stuff. Like I feel like I would like that a little bit more than how this movie is.
So let me ask you some critical questions now.
Yeah, of course.
First of all, now that you've said that,
It's just an interview.
now that you've said that, well, and I have to say, I've kind of spent all day trying to decide where I land on this movie. This is one of those things that I feel like I need a couple more viewings of, and I wish I had time to watch it one more time before we sat down to talk about it, because I know stuff's going to leap out at me that I'm going to understand better on a second viewing with this. But so some of this is, and I don't mean to be wishy-washy, but like I'm going to ask you some of your opinions while I'm trying to figure out what mine are, because I don't know where I land on certain things. And like I said, I think I enjoyed this more as an exercise than I did a movie, which I don't know if I'll have that after I see it again. And I would like to watch this again. I am curious enough about it to see if I'll understand it better and if more stuff will jump out at me on a second viewing. But first of all, did you find yourself, especially now that you know how the movie was made, wishing that more of this was actually scripted? Like, did the improvised thing get in the way of it? Because if it was told as a Twilight Zone episode, it would have been entirely scripted by Rod Serling. Like, do you wish it was done that way?
100%. I think this is an interesting like idea for a movie. The biggest thing that holds it back for me is yeah, that like so many of the scenes are just characters like yelling over each other to the point that it becomes just kind of white noise to me, where it's like, okay, like everybody's talking, I'm not picking up anything, like it's just noise. And then the other big thing for me is just how it looks. Like, um, the camera's constantly shaking and it's going in and out of focus, and it was, I think, like, really hard to look at sometimes, where it was, like, kind of, straining my eyes a bit. And there was just, like, a moment where I was like, "Yeah, like, there's interesting stuff here, like, this could be a really cool movie," but it's almost kind of lost in the actual filmmaking part of it for me.
There is kind of this disconnect, right? Where it's like how much of it is about coming up with a premise that with a high concept premise that you can get away with making like this with no money whatsoever, and how much of it is about actually telling that story. And I think you're right to some degree. The way it's made is getting in the way of the telling the actual story, maybe, or I'm finding myself distracted sometimes by that. And then at the same time, that's part of what's so interesting about it to me. So I don't want to lose that. So I feel really funky about it. Like, uh, for instance, I found, and yes, there are characters talking over each other a lot because it's realistic. That's what would happen with particularly these characters in this kind of situation. And I've always said, like, sometimes you don't want a fiction to be too realistic. You don't actually want people to talk like real people talk, but it
Mhm.
depends on the kind of story you're telling. And I don't know if this is one of those, but one of the things I was really impressed with this, Austin, from the very beginning was how believable and realistic the dialogue was, not knowing that it wasn't scripted. It doesn't feel like a bunch of improv people doing improv. Like, now that I know it is, I see how it was put together, but it really felt like people that had known each other for a long time, all at a party, uh, acting and reacting naturally to me, and I liked that about it.
I think for the most part, yeah, like, there is dialogue where I was like, "Oof, that's rough. I don't like that." But see, I think for me, because you can do like the people talking over each other constantly stuff and make it work, like you said. I'd say for me, this movie is like it's Iron Man 2 over Iron Man 1, where Iron Man 1, they're constantly talking over each other and it feels natural and it's funny and it moves along. Well, in Iron Man 2, it becomes really annoying. And I'm like, okay, stop. Like, it's your turn to talk. Now it's your turn to talk.
Okay, but let me ask you this: how
Yeah.
much of that? Maybe it doesn't matter to you because you're just expressing like the enjoyment you got out of it or lack
Yeah.
thereof. But is it is the problem for you that like these characters like these people felt like actors improvising, or is the issue that you just didn't find these people all that likable or fun to listen to? Because I felt like
Well, and there's part of that
the
too.
I just feel like the characters they created, most of them would be behaving this way, and I bought it.
Yeah, no, and there is an element of that too. Um, but in a weird way, like I think part of it too is that it tracks through the whole movie, where there's like very little let up on it. And I was thinking maybe like halfway through of Tenet, where like the last Nolan movie, because like 40 minutes into Tenet, I was incredibly frustrated because all of the dialogue was spoken very low and very quick like this, so you can get out as much exposition as you can. And it was like really irritating because, like, to me, it didn't sound natural. It was just like, get noise out, get information out. And this one is obviously not that. It's not just like get exposition out. It's, people talk over each other naturally. But so much of the dialogue was just that it became overwhelming and it just got really irritating.
Yeah, well, at the part that, and like I think where the movie is at its weakest is when it has to compromise on maybe the premise of how the movie is made in a way where it's like, well, we wanted to make a thing where there was no script and each actor knows their background. Like, I really liked this about it. This is a cool idea, and I don't mean to say that like the movie uh is good or great because now I know how it's made and it's interesting. But like that's where I'm having a disconnect. Like, I'm so interested in the way this movie is made. I think I think that it's cooler to know that and to think about that than it is maybe even watching the movie. But
Mhm.
Not only
Absolutely.
did the actors only or have just their information and they didn't have a script, but they also didn't know any of the other actors' information. Like that's all they
It's
have
like
is
they're playing a game of Clue.
yeah, exactly. It's weird. It felt like a dinner party game, and it's a movie about a dinner party that feels like they wind up in an accidental, like almost mystery party, like one of those whodunit mystery things. It feels like they like unwittingly wind up in one of those.
Yeah, everybody has to figure out who drugged the food.
Yeah, exactly. Or like who is whom, who has
Yeah.
been doing certain things to other people, and then you find out that it's very complicated because there's a bunch of answers to those questions because of different versions of people and different realities. Um,
Yeah. Well, one thing I thought was interesting too. I don't know if you picked up on this, and I don't know how intentional it is, or if it was like if it straight up was a mistake. But they set up the whole like picture thing where they each have a picture and they have a number on the back, and they use that to kind of figure out, oh, people are from a different universe. But also the numbers that you see when they dump them out aren't the numbers that she writes down. And I don't know if that's like an actual mistake or if that was intentional. I don't know.
oh, really? You mean of the first box?
Yeah, yeah. When you first get it, it was one of the first things I picked up on when they
I
wrote
didn't
them down.
notice
I was
that.
like,
She's writing down
I
different numbers than the ones that are in that, but that doesn't make any sense at all.
because I was like, oh, there was two fours in the pictures, but there's only one when she wrote them down.
Okay, if I see it again,
That's
I'll look for
weird.
that. Yeah, that's true. I didn't notice that.
Especially because it ended up being a plot point. So I was like, I don't know if they're saying something with that or if it's just straight up a mistake.
Well, and I had that question in several places, and maybe we'll get into a little bit of it. The point I was trying to get to earlier, because I forgot where I was going, I guess, was just that when the actors suddenly have to start giving any exposition, and there's not a ton of that, uh, but but it can get a little bit jarring because it doesn't feel like the story's being told exactly the same way. Even though it's not scripted, it starts to feel a little scripted. It starts to, and I don't know if this was how it was done, but it starts to feel like the director was now feeding them more things they were supposed to say or they were supposed to do. And you alluded to this earlier, but the biggest issue with that, it feels like the plot starts to kind of take over, is when just all of a sudden everybody just accepts there are multiple realities. I could not get my head around that. That was when we go from what feels like very realistic how people would react. Everybody's arguing from their own specific perspective, and then you get to a place where suddenly the conversation is okay. We've accepted the premise that there are two realities. We'll find out later there's more. But we've accepted the premise that what is happening is that there are multiple versions of us in this house. And at least one or two people, that should have been way too big of a pill to swallow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They go. One guy, I think his name's Hugh. He comes back and he's got like a big bloody head, and he's like, "Oh, I looked into a window, and I saw it was all of you were there." And then they go, "Oh, there's like another universe version of us over there,"
It takes a
and
little
it's like,
longer than that,
uh, what?
but but you're right because at first and I like this at first several of the other characters don't believe Hugh, and they go, oh, you didn't walk the full 2 blocks, you just walked around this house and you saw us.
Mhm. No, they do have that conversation for like a minute, and then maybe like 10 minutes after that, they have a conversation about maybe they were drugged, but they all get dropped instantly, and it becomes just okay. Now we all accept this, and it was really weird. Like
Yeah,
I,
which is like now this is the
yeah.
conversation, especially because then uh soon after that we get into the discussion of if is it pardon me is it possible everyone was drugged.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you all accepted the premise of multiple realities too quickly, and then you're going, wait a minute, there's this easier explanation, and I feel like it should have been harder to get at least some of them to that place. Like, you should have like maybe the one brainy guy who's like, okay, I've got it, guys. It's alternate realities. It's multiple dimensions, and then everybody after that should be like, that's really far fetched. What are you talking about? Surely there's an easier explanation. Somebody's like, what? Next you're gonna tell me time travel is real, right? Like they pick up on it too quickly. And then I am really distracted by. And again, maybe it'll all fit together a little bit better on a second viewing, but I found myself distracted by certain small details that didn't seem uh, as realistic as the movie seemed to think they were, right? For instance, because we're dealing a lot with probability with this movie, which is interesting, and usually it seems pretty smartly handled. The question of okay, we're all of these different variations of us are us, but there are different decisions that maybe we would make, right? So what's the probability that the guy in this other dimension will do the same thing that I'm thinking about doing right now? And it's almost at loggerheads about that in places, right? Like when Hugh decides to write the note that starts off "Hey there" with the exclamation point, the other Hugh that thinks to write that note, it's not going to be exactly the same note, is it? Would it be exactly the same note?
Apparently, there was like 1,500 versions of him that all wrote the same note.
Like, if and maybe the idea is supposed to be that they all experience all of the exact same things precisely up to the point where they decide to write the note. But if anything was off even a skosh, I don't know if I've ever used that word before, you would think that Hugh would maybe insert a comma someplace else, maybe write the words a little smaller, maybe use a different colored pen, like something would be different.
Yeah, you'd think even like a different color pen thing, because we're doing the different color um,
Glow sticks.
glow sticks.
Okay, that's a good segue to my
And then they
second
also make a
example.
big deal about the different using that same color on the picture. Sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, my second example is, and this might sound nitpicky, but it distracted me because, again, the movie, I don't want to say that it's being pretentious or patting itself on the back, but it's really leaning hard on this is all supposed to be pretty realistic and make sense, and look at us, we've done our homework, this is a science fiction film. It's not just a conceit, we're really dealing with the probability idea. Okay, so, Nicholas Brendan's character, Mike, brings out the glow sticks, and there's this kind of amusing moment where the lights go out and he goes, hey, I've got this solved, I got glow sticks, everybody, and like, we're gonna do a rave. And they're still trying to have fun with this, right? And because you're with people that you like, and the only problem you've had so far is the lights go out, and so, well, we can still have a good time while the lights are out. So he brings out the glow sticks, he goes, I have them in 3 different colors, you guys. You're telling me that in no reality, because we see several versions of these characters that are all walking around the block with each of them always has the same color glow sticks, but part of the way you're supposed to be able to tell that it's different realities is this group has the red ones, this group has the blue ones. Not one group, one of the girls or somebody doesn't go, well, he's got a blue one, I like the red one, break open that box, use one of the other color. Really? Like, the whole point of, again, I know this sounds nitpicky, but it took me out. Like, so Mike's like, oh, look, guys, I have 3 variations, let's break open one box and we'll all use the same color. Really?
Well, yeah, that's how colors work.
Oh,
Uniformity, Cap.
it was a contrived way to tell different versions apart.
Yeah, and then it becomes weird because we like shoot them sinisterly, where it's like, oh, this is a red one, and it becomes like a little silly.
Let me read. Yeah. Let me read a couple super chats real quick. Jar Jar Ed, $5 super chat. The perfect way to sum up Marvel Phase 4. It was funny at first, but it's starting to get annoying.
That is correct.
I don't have anything to add, but I think it's funny that he took what you said out of context and applied it to MCU. Writer,
Because everything I say is so smart that you can like take it and like put it into other things, and it works.
it's very poignant. Yeah,
It's very cerebral.
Yeah, and versatile too.
Absolutely, it's a lot of like big multiple syllable words, really.
Honestly, I feel like we could probably bulk up our t-shirt shop a lot more if we just took most of the things you say and put them on a t-shirt because they're that versatile.
I mean, I've had people be like, "Oh, you should start writing a book of things that you say," and I'm like, "Okay, that'll be your shirt shop."
You'll have a Twitter feed. I don't know if you'll get this reference. You'll start a Twitter feed with just a bunch of silly
So
things that you've
defeated.
said, and then it'll get really popular, and then it'll become a short-lived sitcom that nobody watches, starring William Shatner.
Oh, I do remember that. I remember when that premiered.
Was it stuff my
My
dad
dad
says?
says.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it was weird too because they had. I'm running away with myself. People that complain that I
I love
ramble
that we
too
both
much.
censored it in a different way,
Here's
though.
your moment. Well, the reason I did it that way is because all the advertising, there was an pardon me, there was an announcer that would say stuff my dad says, but on screen what you're seeing is shit with an asterisk for the I.
Mhm.
So it was really awkward because it's
Yeah.
like, well, how does the announcer say? I just wouldn't have had an announcer, but then we go, oh, stuff my dad says, premiering Thursday at 7 or whatever it was, and I'm like, but it's not stuff.
You know
It's
what's
so
really weird about
weird.
that? Or sorry, you know what that is?
What's that?
That's weird or what? Let's just
Uh,
start talking about random Shatner shows that
can
no
we
one remembers.
Can we move on? We don't need to pad this out. We actually probably have quite a bit more to say about this movie. Writer, $2 super chat. The theory is every cut to black is a new group. I wanted to talk about that because the director and writer has also seen this movie. I can't believe people have seen this. This, by the way, doubled its money. It made $100,000. Um, the director has said that the cuts mean something, but he has the integrity not to tell us what they mean. And the conventional wisdom initially would tell you that it has something to do with the comet, but there are places where you'd think it would cut that it doesn't. So it gets really difficult to tell what exactly it is. My initial guess was that it was simply and because like there's places where the power will go out or something and it won't cut to black. My initial thought was that it must just be there to denote time passing.
But we also do it like in the middle of scenes where we'll have like a scene cut to black and then the scene continues.
And
So
and so I'm wrong about that. So if the and I had that thought like maybe we're cutting to a different house every time, which would be the only explanation for what you were talking about with her,
with the pictures.
yeah, with her writing down the wrong numbers.
Hmm.
Because you could be seeing a version of her from a different universe.
Yeah, I don't know if it cuts to black in that point. I don't remember.
Is that too gimmicky if that's what it is my question.
Maybe. I also just thought it was kind of annoying. It was, I don't know, there was like a lot of just kind of filmmaking choices that just kind of like bothered me while watching it, where it was like, this is kind of taking me out.
Let's put a pin in that and talk about
Yeah.
like the way it's shot and cinematography and stuff here in a second because I meant to go to that earlier when you brought it up. Let's go ahead and do that.
Mhm.
But for a second, let's stay with the cuts because it feels real deliberate. I agree. I don't think the director is being pompous when he says there's a reason. I'm just not going to tell you what it is. There probably is, and he's hoping that the movie stands on its own. Uh,
No, I mean, that's what you should do.
Yeah, it does feel deliberate, and maybe that's the idea. But I'm of two minds about it if Ryder is right, because on the one hand, it might be irksome because you're never actually following the same characters you think you're following, and I realize that later on there's a reveal about that. But if we're constantly cutting to a different group of people, then it's like, well, how can I even follow character arcs or anything? Like these people are not all the same people, so we just keep introducing a new group of people that are slightly different from the others, then it doesn't feel as character driven. And then the other side of that is, well, that's the point. It's an identity question. Are these the same people or not? Like you are following the same 8 people the whole time, but they've all splintered off and they're slightly different variations of each other that make different decisions. And then the question would be, so take your pick of which of those it is and whether it's a problem. But then the question becomes, and I'm gonna, if I see it again, I'll really watch for that. Uh, Maybe it's deliberate cuts in that we are jumping to different dimensions, but is there like enough of a reason for why we're with the particular group we are when we jump to a particular group? It's a little bit weird if we're going to different dimensions, Austin, with the cuts that
Mhm.
we set up. Hugh leaves, and we think the one that comes back is the one we had at the beginning, but it actually is a different one, and then we pay that off later. But then it's not really a payoff if we jump to a different dimension. You see what I'm saying?
What it
It
also
sort of
becomes
is and it sort of
weird,
isn't.
yeah, and it also becomes weird because it kind of plays like the blonde woman M, I think, is the only one that you see from start to finish. So like that becomes weird too.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about the girl that attacks herself at the end?
Yep. Yeah.
How easy did you find it to track all of that, her motivation and what she was doing?
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with it. I was like, okay, she's just trying to find a world and she's just gonna live in the nicest one she finds, I guess.
Yeah, which is a cool idea, and I felt like we got
Mm.
enough background from that character that I bought that she was unhappy enough that she would try to find like the most ideal version of her life. I liked the thing with the ring and all of that, where like she loses hers and then she steals the one that her counterpart self is wearing, and then the next day, the guy found that ring on the floor of the bathroom and gave it to her, even though she's already wearing it. I like that stuff.
Mhm.
My question about all of that is what maybe she didn't have one. Maybe she's just flying by the seat of her pants. What was her end game? Was she gonna murder herself? What did she think would happen the next day?
Uh, I don't think she really thought about it. She's not very smart, but
She knocks herself out, and then
yeah,
I guess she gets lucky that the other version of herself leaves so that nobody sees two of her.
yeah, which doesn't really make sense. It's that only happens because we want to have like the big shock ending, but it's not that crazy of a big shock ending. What would have been crazier
I
was
wasn't
would
sure
have
how I
been if
felt
she
about that.
walked in.
Oh, and you have a Back to the Future 2 moment?
Yeah, like it felt really cheap where it's like our big shocker ending is just like, oh, hold on, I'm getting a call. It's from you.
Did it not kind of feel like the movie never ended? Like, it didn't feel like an ambiguous. I'm just asking. One viewing, this is how I feel about it. And again, a lot of. This is why I'm so, like on the fence about some things, because I feel like this is, and I bring this up all the time. This feels like it could be a Fight Club situation where I see it a second time as a totally different experience, and I appreciate some things I'm not appreciating now. So I want to potentially give it that possibility, but like it felt like not really an ending.
Like it
I
just kind
was
of stops.
I was left a little unsatisfied. Like all it
There's a lot of
really
questions about like what happens after, which can be really cool for an ending of like, okay, like you kind of figure out what happens from now.
I didn't find that satisfying in this particular case. I found
I
myself going, okay, so how many of the different versions of all these people are just walking around now? Like is it, or is the idea that she's the only one because she walked through the dead zone and this just happens to be the reality the universe chose? Maybe that's what it is, but I don't feel like that ending tells us for sure. It could be that there's like 100,000 versions of all these people in reality now. Like you don't really know. There's an assumption made early on that the universe will pick one, and like whichever is the the prime universe or whatever, and everything else gets wiped away. But how would you know that for sure?
Mhm.
It's all theoretical.
We should write a sequel to this movie cap and then make it for $10, where it's the next morning and everyone on the planet wakes up and they're one of these 8 people, and it's just your book, but instead of food, they're these 8 people.
I like that. That's great. We could call it convergence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the $5, because we'll shoot it in one day, and the $5 will go for each of us for a tuna fish sandwich, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. We'll each get a tuna fish sandwich, and we'll get a beer so we can bring back Mike. He'll be the one returning cast member.
Oh yeah, that's because you're assuming that he's the one that did it just for a beer. I
Yeah.
want to think that Nicholas Brendan brought all of the TV show background to it, and that wasn't something on his note card. I like I
I
read
wondered that too.
I read a review that was kind of praising him for making fun of himself, and thought that was kind of fun. And he's had a real tumultuous life since this, and yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want to
he
get into
told
all of
his
that.
face playing himself, and then I was like, huh, like I'm gonna look this up. Oh.
It's yeah, it's a little sad because he's playing a washed out actor who is not happy with his current lot in life, and that's exactly who he is in real life. But he's also kind of got delusions of grandeur, and
Hmm.
anyway, but I want to think that he brought that to it because that's kind of fun. What's weird about it is that he name drops a real TV show.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, because he says he was on um he was on Roswell for 4 years.
Oh,
Roswell's a
okay,
real
that's right.
show,
That's right. I didn't remember what show it was.
and I've
That's
never seen
weird.
that show, so I don't know if he says that the character he plays is named Joe and he's the main character, and if that's true, then he's playing a fictitious character who played a real life fictional role in a TV show.
Well, then it becomes
That's
Once Upon a
weird.
Time. Then it becomes Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because DiCaprio's playing a fictional actor, but he's also like getting roles in like The Green Hornet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Jar Jar Ed also put in a $5 super chat and says, "Is the multiverse in the multiverse? There is a geekvolution where Sarah and Jason rock mohawks. That would be such a like divergent universe from the one we live in. Like maybe Jason, but
that sounds like it would be a joke in the. Do you remember the Trails of Horror episode with the toaster, where Homer's going back in time and like comes back and the future's changed?
yeah, vaguely.
That sounds like a joke in that. Like he comes back and just like two of them have mohawks.
Like for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I'm jumping around, but this is another thing I wanted to ask you about. Oh, and then we should talk about the way the film is shot. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Why does the glass break?
Because comets hate glass. I don't know.
Okay, so that's the answer for the cell phones, is that it's just a phenomenon that happens, and that's tracked to a time where something similar happened with a real comet, right? But there's a scene where we see a broken piece of glass on a table, and it wasn't like that before, but now it is because of the dimension jumping thing. But my question is, did the comet do that, or was that supposed to be, again, is that supposed to be the dimension jumping thing? I honestly wasn't sure what the implication was.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Because obviously the stuff with the broken glass in the car is that like other versions of them are doing it,
Right.
but then the phones are just I don't know something comet.
And that was an idea I liked a lot. But yeah, but I'm talking about like the
No, I know,
picture
but
on the
that's
table.
why
Yeah,
I'm saying like with the table thing. I don't know. Like I guess that falls into the phone thing.
I'm not sure what caused it. Uh, but yeah, that was an idea I liked. Was all the times that a character would bring up an idea and would get shot down, or would decide that maybe it wasn't a good idea to try to do, and then in another universe they did go through with it, and then our characters are the unwitting recipients of that, and I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it is really funny that
Like Mike thinks about blackmailing himself, and then there's a version of him that does that.
yeah, no, I like that Mike is just instantly like, oh my, like I would kill every other me, so I need to go out and hurt him before he gets to me.
Yeah, that's pretty
So
great.
that's real weird.
Well, and it's paid off really nicely when he gets attacked by himself.
No, no, that was really funny.
Bob the Hunt, $2 super chat. Austin, did you get hit by another train today?
No, I saw a train and I like thought about that for a moment because I had to wait for the train to pass, and I thought about it. I was like, oh, like this brings me back.
This brings me back to last weekend when I almost died, and then I had to do 8 hours of a 24-hour stream.
Yeah, and nobody cared. I'm still more mad about that cheese.
I know you were really upset about the moldy cheese.
I wanted that cheese so bad.
Okay, talk about the cinematography and what you didn't like about it.
Okay, so first of all, digital filmmaking is like the death of the B movie because there's just something about watching a B movie that's shot on film versus digital where like even if it's like super crappy and like grainy on film, like oh, it's just kind of more interesting to look at. While digital, everything just kind of looks bland and flat. But then also just everything's going in and out of focus constantly for seemingly no reason. Like you'll just be like looking at a person just like shot and the camera's going and it's like just like going in and out of focus and my eyes were just going like oh I don't like looking at this.
When we were talking about this briefly last night over text, you suggested the thought that I had, which is it feels like a found footage movie that's not a found footage movie.
Mhm. No, it absolutely has that because the camera moves like a found footage movie, but then it's
And the
not.
cuts made it feel like that.
Well, that was
Because
the other big thing too, is the cuts. Yeah.
found footage movies, it'll be like, I'm rolling, and then you cut, and then that tells you the time passed because now we're cutting to when we have footage again. And here you can't immediately tell why, whether it's what writer's talking about or some other reason that the director has. I am also, again, I'm just really wishy-washy with this particular review. Austin, I'm also on the fence about the way it's shot. I I had the same thing for the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then I don't know if I warmed up to it or if I just got used to it. But I started feeling like it was maybe the right way to go. I don't know why there's so much uh, blurred focus. I'm with you there.
Mhm.
But I feel like shooting this to be a little bit disorienting, especially if the idea is we're jumping between dimensions and we don't know it. There could be an extra layer to that you would pick up on a second viewing and be like, okay, this is why it's shot this way. But also, whether you think this is effective or not, I think maybe part of the reason that choice was made was because it's a movie with no budget. And the
No,
worry
that's
was
definitely a thing
if
too.
we try to make it look more high budget than it is, it takes away authenticity of it. Like something about it being, like mostly, if not entirely, handycam like it is, and feeling like there's another person there that's not actually one of the characters in it. Like you're in the room and you're one of the people that's there. Even though I didn't totally understand why it was shot that way, it did give a certain authenticity and less pretension to the whole thing, I thought. And it also might be making up a little bit for the fact that it's shot on digital and not film. Because if it's shot on film, immediately you get that, and I agree with you, immediately you get that kind of gritty realism to it, where it feels more like you're actually like in the room with them. Something about it being shot
It gives
digital,
it a cheaper quality too.
yeah, and like it's kind of supposed to look cheap, but there's a difference between an intentional cheapness, which is what they're going for, and we just didn't have any money, but we're trying to fake you into thinking that. Like, how many B movies have you seen like that, right? We're like, it's more ambitious than we have the resources for, but we're hoping that you can just use your imagination. This is not a use your imagination movie. This is a movie that's saying we have no money, and that's on purpose. This is the way this movie is supposed to be. It's supposed to look that way. It's supposed to feel that way. But then there's like a certain amount of cheating that happens with it too, where it's like we're trying so hard to make it look cheap. I don't get why it's shot like that. And that's why I'm on the fence about it. Because
Mhm.
if it was shot more like a traditional movie, I think I would be thinking about the cheapness of it more than I am.
No, absolutely. And I
How else
mean,
do you shoot this movie? Maybe less blurry, but
yeah,
like,
I don't know. Tripods and shoulder rigs aren't expensive. Go out and buy one.
but again, if your idea and I mean maybe your point is okay, but why? Like, there's no point in shooting with this little, resources. But if the idea is just we paid for a camera and that's it.
Hmm. Yeah. No, and I mean that is something I've definitely seen, like crappier B movies, but they're also, you know, more interesting to look at. You know, like, and with less money.
Well, and you know, in a certain way, I don't feel like this is a movie. I feel like it's more of a stage play.
Yeah.
It's a stage
Uh,
play that has to be shot because we go outside and stuff, but like it's not really a movie. It's more of a stage play. Like I don't know that the camera and the way it's shot. I don't feel like what it looks like is really all that important.
but I feel like that's also part of my thing, which
Yeah,
is that if it
and
was a stage play,
maybe that's a problem.
it would be a lot better because I'm not dealing with the weird filmmaking stuff that's kind of taking me out.
And
Um,
you could do a cool stage play with this, absolutely.
no,
And
definitely.
the
This would be a
director
fun
is
idea for a play.
more of a stage guy. Uh, like that's the background he comes from.
Yeah, and I imagine most of the actors in this are stage people.
Did I can't remember. Did you talk about the Pirates connection?
No, so this guy was like was it like concept artist or like a stage person? Like
Apparently, he was the main concept artist.
yeah, okay, so it was concept art. I couldn't remember if it was like a set dressing thing or if it was concept art. But yeah, he worked on I think at least the first three
The first
Pirates, if not the first
three.
four.
Yep.
And he directed a short film that was Pirates themed. That's like an official Disney thing. That's not like a homebrew, like
Isn't that crazy that we
fanfic.
stumbled that because of a request we stumbled on this not too long after
You know what's even
we did the
crazier?
commentary for that movie, and that this is the guy that must have had a lot to do with the look of those movies.
No, exactly. But you know what's even crazier is we initially thought that tonight's request was going to be a Stephen King adaptation, and one of the things on the Friday show is a Stephen King thing that was very close to winning, and then it turned out it was this, and that of course, you know, we just said that with the Pirates connection. One of the other things on Friday that was very close to winning was Gore Verbinski's The Ring remake.
Oh yeah, we would have
So
ended up with
we
another thing
almost
that
had a connection there too.
he made. I keep forgetting that he directed that.
Yeah. No, it's super weird.
And how did we avoid Stephen King the whole month on accident?
Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. On the shows, we've completely missed out on Stephen King. I've seen a lot of Stephen King things recently, but not for the show, obviously.
I was kind of hoping if neither of my things won for the poll this week that it would be Christine, just because I've never seen it and I have a
I was
copy of
really
it.
hoping for Christine.
Yeah.
I'm happy with any of those four, so it's not like, oh, I'm disappointed. But it was like, oh, like I really hope it's Christine. Oh, it's not. That's okay though. I'll pick Christine another time.
Anything else you want to make sure and say about Coherence before we go ahead and reveal what that is on Friday and what next Wednesday's show is going to be?
Yeah, for sure. There's one Whedon-y line in this movie that I was like, oh, I don't like this. Which is when they bring up the Schrodinger's cat thing, and then Mike yells in the background, I think I'm allergic to that. It's like, oh, I hate that. Don't do that. Curse you, Joss Whedon.
I don't know. That kind of thing bothers you more than it does me. I don't even see that as a Whedon line so much as just maybe a person would say that if they didn't know what you were talking about. I don't know.
No, it felt in the moment like a Whedon line. Like I was thinking back to like Age of Ultron's dialogue, and I was like, oh, it skeeves me out. I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not with you there, but
Mhm. I don't know. I'm very particular about dialogue. Um, that
well,
is
and
something.
I'm also like to be fair, my background is informed a lot by Whedon, so like
Well,
some
and that's
of
the other
that
thing too. Yeah.
like you know doesn't bother me as much as it does other people. Some of it does.
Mhm.
I still can't deal
Yeah.
with that. How's that a party line in Avengers? Like, I can't.
Yeah, it's just funny because that doesn't even jump out at me. That's just like whatever. But there's like tons of other things that jump out at me. It's really funny.
Um, My main takeaway from this is that even though I'm finding it kind of a mixed bag as a piece, I'm so interested in the way it's made that I'm finding it kind of inspiring, Austin. Like, I want to make a movie like this. Like, that was
No,
my big
that's
thing watching this is I'm like, oh, I could maybe do something like this. Like, I want to write a movie like this. And not necessarily like improvised the way this is, but just like I want to make a movie with no money that's intentionally supposed to be made with no money.
mhm. No, absolutely.
Like I
Uh,
sort of did that with Spawn Year, but I did buy some things. Like it would be interesting to try to shoot a thing like this where you just worked with what you had, but went with a high concept.
mhm. No, definitely. Um, no, I feel like this is just kind of one of those movies where it's like really cool on paper, but just the filmmaking aspects of it kind of hold it down for me. But like everything, like the ideas and stuff are really cool, and like this could have been really awesome, but just I don't know, it just doesn't gel with how they actually made it.
Yeah, I would go with a lukewarm green. I guess we didn't do sign flips. Do you end up with a red lukewarm or otherwise, or where are you at on it?
Oh, that's really hard.
Right? That's why I'm making you do it.
I guess probably a lukewarm red, but like I don't know, it's just unfortunate.
There's a lot of cool in it.
Yeah. No, it's the film aspect of it that I don't really like. But like everything besides that I think is pretty cool. You know what? I It's lukewarm red, but it's knocked over because of that Schrodinger's cat line. That's what knocked it over into red.
Yeah, well, I feel like with this particular case, we have to like either of our sign flips. You can also see the other way because there's a version of us in another universe that is so uncertain of it that we went the other way, right? Like that's how much we can't decide. We're like there's part of me that's like lukewarm red, in another universe, and that in that same universe you went green, but we
Yeah.
had
Well,
exactly
yeah.
the same conversation.
No, and then there's like another version of us where like they come in and they beat us up for not knowing which to flip on. And then there's the you that's just going around like eating all of the other caps. See, that's the difference between how Cap and I would handle a situation. Cap would kill all of the other Caps. Well, I would like raise an army of me's, and then we'd all go into one reality and like take it over. That's the difference.
See, I want to argue with you, but I don't know if that's wrong.
No, it's absolutely
Austin, would
correct.
you reveal what we're going to be doing a commentary for on Friday with the $5 Patreon poll?
So we are doing Candyman.
See, you win more often than I do.
Not really. You win more often than I do, but in October I've won more
No,
often.
that's not true. But I think I've won one time.
No, because there was like 3 or 4 in when I finally won one.
Is that
So
right?
yeah,
How many
uh,
times have we even done this though? I thought it was like 4 or 5 times in total.
I don't. It was at least twice
Okay, all right.
that you won
We'd have to go
before I
back and
did.
look at the records that I haven't kept.
We gotta go look at the
At
records,
the
kid.
records. I'm excited to finally see Candyman because Tony Todd is one of my favorite actors, and I've never seen the thing he's most known for.
Yeah, well, I think you're gonna really like Candyman because it's very similar to The Ring.
Is it?
Uh,
I didn't know that.
just in the, it's like a blonde woman like figuring out like what's going on. Like it's that kind of intrigue.
Very
You
important
have
that it's
like
a
a
blonde
mystery
woman.
thing. Yeah, when I watched it, I was like, is this just The Ring? It even like they even have the same hair color.
I had the same thing with Jeffrey Combs, where like I'm a huge Jeffrey Combs fan, but it was years and years before I saw Reanimator because I'm just not a horror guy, and
Yeah.
I didn't love that movie. Like I get why people do, but that was the thing I probably could have lived without. So it'll be
Well,
interesting to see how Candyman is. Say again.
So that makes sense with that. No, I think you'll like Candyman. Not as much as like The Fly, but I think you'll really like that movie.
And again, that will be a commentary, not a review.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it tomorrow night, I think.
So everybody pop in with us on Friday if you're so inclined, and that will be our last big Halloween hurrah. Captain Logan Show tomorrow night will be our Halloween special, and it's special in that we'll be wearing costumes, and that might be the only thing that's special about it. Chewbacca's lover $2 super chat. There's a version of Austin that loves that line.
I don't think there's any version of me that loves that line. It's like Mike is always an alcoholic in every world.
Well, that's one of the things I like about this movie is that it's really realistic about that, where it isn't suggesting that like every possible thing that could happen happens. It's like everything's based on character motivation. And I like that
Yeah,
a lot, especially if it's all diverging from just that night. Like there's a little bit of butterfly effect, but like nothing's going to be that far off the mark. Like there's nothing crazy. This is like the
it's not
opposite.
once everything everywhere all at once. I was like, what was that
That's what
movie
I was just about
called
to say.
again?
This is the complete opposite of everything everywhere all at once, where there's not a version where from tonight, because I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. This is what it is. There's not a version with hot dog fingers. There's not a version where somebody's got like a talking raccoon on their head.
Mhm. They're
There's not
not
a
rocks
version where
or
they're
whatever.
rocks.
Although, I think we can both agree we would have liked it a little bit more if there was rocks with little googly eyes on them.
Oh, they should have started with that. It should have been a party of 8 rocks with the googly eyes.
Well, I want to see the world where like that's the one where she realizes she's in the wrong house. Like she's looking around at everyone's rocks and she's like, "Wait a minute, our numbers are different. This can't be the same
She
house."
goes through the dark area and comes out the other side, and it's not a house anymore. It's like a friggin' castle.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. It's like a pyramid.
Austin, next week we're going to be doing something entirely different. We're not going to do Night Shift yet. We almost did that this week until we realized that it was not based after all on Stephen King. So we're going to put that back on the night that it was supposed to be. So sorry, Stone Gaspin, but a couple weeks from now we'll do Night Shift. Next week, Josh has asked us to do The Iron Giant, which is a movie I haven't seen since early 2000s. I think I saw that in the theater when it came out, and then a couple of times on video, and I haven't seen it since then.
I've never seen the Iron Giant.
So that'll be interesting.
Hmm. No, it'd be pretty cool. I've heard that's a good movie.
I remember liking it a lot, but I haven't seen it in a lot of years. So it'll
Mhm.
be interesting to see what that's like going, back in time after it's informed some things and after a lot
After he
more of.
fought Mechagodzilla.
I was gonna say after a lot of its sensibilities have become kind of more mainstream because if memory serves, that's a American movie that's taking a lot of cues from anime before anime is that popular.
Oh, interesting.
I may be wrong about that, but that's what I'm remembering retroactively looking back at it.
Hmm. No, Iron Giant's weird because it's like people remember it enough that WB keeps like shoving it into these like look at what we own movies.
Yeah. Bob the Hunt says Iron Giant is 1999. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that like the last time I saw it was early 2000s. Like I saw it in the theater and then a couple times on video after that. And that's it.
Hmm.
Thomas Lowe, is this movie cohesive? Yeah, I meant to make that joke at the beginning that like when I first saw the title Coherence, I was like, well, you better not make a movie that doesn't add up at all, because
Hmm.
that'd be a mistake. And yeah, I would call it more or less cohesive.
No, it kind of all converged together, I think.
Yeah, which is why you could fit either of those titles.
Hmm. It could have even been called cohesive, cohesion.
Cohesion. Yeah. Although if you think about it, a more apt title would have probably been incoherence, because like that's what happens is like we have coherence and then everything comes apart and it becomes but then you don't really want to make a movie called Incoherence,
Oh, you know what it should have been
because then you'd be
called?
thinking more about what the movie might be, right? Like Coherence, I'm making that joke, but like you might go to a movie called Coherence not thinking about the filmmaking of it. Make a movie called Incoherence, you're going to expect the film itself is incoherent.
It should have been called Dr. Bad Comet, uh, bracket, how I learned to stop going through the dark zone, kill myself, and become the me in the best possible reality I could find.
And
That's
somehow
close
still a
bracket.
better title than Birds of Prey.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good. I'm impressed with how you strung that together that quickly.
Thank you. Thank you. It just came to me. It was one of those things. It was like, there we go.
That was a decent improv exercise all on its own. Well, anyway,
Hey, I won an improv award, so there we go.
oh, good job. You won an award. I'm gonna start doing that every time I write something and somebody's like, "Hey, that was some pretty good writing." I'll be like, "Yeah, in college I won an award."
I want to participate. Look at that. See,
I-
this is why I didn't deserve an award.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Sorry for spoiling so much of this as early as we did. It was really hard not to just get into all the story points with this one. But this being as obscure as it is, I figured folks would more likely watch this if they've seen it or wouldn't mind stuff spoiled. So anyway, hope that was okay for folks. We'll see you again real soon. Like I said, Captain Logan Show tomorrow night, and Austin and I will be watching Candyman on Friday.
Yep, my favorite DC character.
Candyman. Is
Yep.
your favorite DC character Black Adam?
No, it's Candyman. I just said that.
Oh, okay. That's not a DC character.
Oh, he is in Ostrander's run of Suicide Squad.
Oh, really? So this is over my head. I don't know what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and Amanda Waller's backstory, her daughter was killed by Candyman originally, and it like name drops the location of that movie. It's really weird.
Oh, that's bizarre. I thought you meant there was an obscure character I've never heard of called Candyman that was in one issue that maybe had like a sucker for a head or something.
Mm-hmm. No, and it came out like 3 years before that movie, so I guess it's looking at the book that it was based on.
Oh.
But it's really weird.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost. Later, folks.